Secretary, Center for Folklore Studies and Research, Dr. Rose Marin, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Bharata Mata College, Kochi, Dr. Relo Kenya, Guest Faculty, Center for Comparative Literature, University of Hyderabad. And lastly, we have Dr. Nimita AP, an independent researcher from Kottayam, Kerala. So for our first presenter, Dr. Arunima Chetia, I welcome you, ma'am. The title is The Loom, the Lyre and the Law, a performative analysis of gendered cultural labor in the folklore of Northeast India.
Himani, did you get my PowerPoint?
Yes,
you
sent me a video.
It's a PowerPoint. If you're not been able to, it's in the WhatsApp I sent you. If it's not possible, I can, if it's possible, just try. Otherwise, how many minutes we have?
We have 10 minutes for like in general, but you can take another 2 minutes if it is long.
Himanshi, we can take 12 to 13 to 15 minutes. Don't worry. Let them be happy.
Well,
then we will squeeze in a little time for discussion. That's fine. No?
Sure, sir.
Arunima, what do you think?
Yes, sir.
Because that will be better. Yeah.
Yes.
Only, yeah, you people manage.
I have your video readily available with me. If you want, I can play it for you right away. If you're able to.
Yeah, you try playing it. I will just read. I would just like to go for the main point because it's a big paper.
Sure. You may proceed, and then meanwhile I'll try to.
So, shall I start then?
Yes.
Okay, Arunima. Okay. Go
ahead. When I today's paper, the title of my paper is The Loom, the Lyre and the Law. So basically in this paper, I would like to talk about the gendered cultural labor in folklore of Northeast India. So I just would like to talk few things that how performance is a matter to be concerned in our folklore studies. So here I'm taking, considering Northeast as my field for this paper and giving some example how whole thing is Northeast India is a unique blend of patriarchal and matrilineal system and how this cultural labor is a dynamic and a performative practice of knowledge transmission. So in the very beginning, in the keynote address from Molly ma'am, we have heard how folklore is a dynamic process. It's not only a relic and a living tradition, but it's something which is a part of our evolution. So here in this paper, my approach will be to find out the role of performance, especially songs, stories, rituals. So some intangible as well as some tangible items like rituals, craft as the central to the construction of identity. So in this paper, I basically would like to talk how gender role emerges as a key factor, how men and women are not born into fixed roles, but at the same time, they are continually shaped into them through some repeated cultural performances. So Northeast Indian context is especially illuminating in the context of its deeply patriarchal structure, as well as matrilineal system, notably in Khasi and Garo in Meghalaya, which creates a unique ground for studying how folklore mediates power, gender, and identity. So I'm talking about, I'm considering Judith Butler's theory of gender performativity, which argues gender identity as not only an innate essence, but something continuously produced through repeated acts within the cultural frameworks in the society. So folklore becomes one of the primary areas where such acts are performed, whether through singing, storytelling, weaving, ritual enactment, or judicial or administration. Secondly, feminist anthropology introduces the concept of cultural labor, which undervalued but indispensable work that sustains communities and reproduces social identities. When these perspectives are combined, folklore is revealed not as a static body of tradition, but as an active life practice where gender roles, hierarchies, and cultural values are constantly negotiated. So thus, this is considered as a part of the evolutionary dynamic space of folklore. So in the Northeast Indian context, we have got 200 indigenous communities in Northeast. So giving some examples from this area will highlight how I can validate my points. So since this is a place called Khasi Garo in Meghalaya, especially, which follow matrilineal inheritance, where property and lineage passed through women, yet men contribute to a dominant political and ritual authority, which talks again a tension that has been termed as matrilineal puzzle. Matrilineal puzzle basically says that the inheritance is according to the matrilineal system, but at the same time, half of the power goes to men also. So colonialism, missionary interventions further complicated this picture, recasting indigenous people as tribes. And after that, it was often suppressing rituals viewed as hidden. This historical layering makes the region a fertile ground for examining how folklore reflects the tension between patriarchy and matrilineal, a tradition and modernity. So this is my research questions are basically: how is cultural labor divided across gender lines? How do performance and gender shapes identity and authority? And how do modernization, Christianity and digital media transform folklore? So basically this was I have done some field work there. Being from there, I have seen this from my childhood, and I have done a lot of research. Like for last 20 years, I am working in Northeast. So there I have seen all this, and from there I have considered this my paper. Now I would like to give you some examples. For example, in wedding songs, which is called Biyanam, these are exclusively sung by women. In Assam, Biyanam has got a lot of value, and it's completely a women's part. Similarly, Ainam, Dhainam. Then Ainam, Dhainam is is the songs where women takes the pivotal role. Basically, they are the songs, devotional songs for the enrichment of the society, for sung during the time of illness, affirming women's role as spiritual protectors of the household. So women are considered also as a protector. Then lullabies are definitely a part of women's song. Among the missing Oinitam songs, among the missing tribe, Oinitam is a love song, though not exclusively female, but often reflect the themes of youth psychology and relationship through women's perspective, and show how song provides a channel for emotional expression. Then similarly, Khasi women excel in ballads and lullabies. Their creativity linked with both domestic life and cultural imagination. So this collectively, all these genres illustrate how women, even within seemingly private spaces, actively participate in shaping cultural norms and maintaining continuity through oral performance. Then weaving is totally and exclusively is a women's cultural labor in Northeast India. Among the Ao Nagas, weaving is explicitly forbidden for men in Nagaland, reinforcing that its role as female exclusive domain. Boro women produce garments such as dokhana and arnai, which are embroidered with cosmological motifs, turning textile into vessels of cultural memory, which is completely, exclusively a part of women's dominated area. Then Mishing women are renowned for their skills, and woven garments, the designs, often narrate the ancestral histories, and this is completely a process which considered women's involvement. Then similarly in Muga, muga production, whilst the golden thread of muga, which has got 85% sun ray protection, has got GI tag. It is totally a women-dominated area, although male also has a significant role. But after production, women takes a major part in creating this fabric and then creating an attire. So historically, weaving takes the majority part, take the major role in all this. Then rites of passage. There is a ritual related to puberty, women's puberty, where women gets the girl who gets the first puberty needs to undergo a 4-day seclusion. So the Assamese term for this is called Tuloni Biya. This marks a girl's first menstruation, is an elaborate ritual involving seclusion and symbolic marriage to a banana tree, affirming fertility and readiness for adulthood. Among the Aunagas, tattooing served as rites of passage for girls performed only by elder women, permanently inscribing cultural identity onto the body. Rituals such as Subhasini Pooja performed exclusively by women before auspicious events. So thus this ceremonies carried out with female-only spaces demonstrate how womanhood is publicly constructed through ritual. By encoding fertility, purity, and spiritual guardianship onto the female body, these rites reveal how folklore functions as both social script and performative enactment of identity. Now I'm coming to men's cultural labor. Am I audible so far? Himanshi?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Are you able to see the presentation? We can also slide it.
Yeah, we can see the presentation, but it's not in the slideshow manner, so it is difficult.
Yes, now I am in page number 11. Actually, I am playing my own because so that I can maintain the time. So now I am in page number 11. Here I am talking about men's cultural labor. So in contrast, men also has got a lot of cultural labor. So basically men typically like dominate the public facing. So while we're talking about women's labor, but now we are talking about the male's domination over public facing and judicial aspects of folklore. They serve as priests, epic storytellers, proverb keepers, and community elders, assuming authority over the collective memory and governance of the society. This division of labor positions men as the guardians of law, history, reinforcing their dominance in the political and social spheres. Men's folklore contributions are often performed in communal or sacred spaces, village courts. We see only headmen nor head women there. Although Meghalaya Meghalaya is considered as matrilineal society, but there we find only village head, who is completely a male person. Village courts, festivals, bachelor dormitories, granting them visibility and legitimacy. Thus, by controlling epic narratives, proverbs, and rituals, men effectively shape the community's worldview, marginalizing women's contribution to the domestic or private domain. Then proverbs as matriarchal law. So there is a very, very popular proverb in Northeast. However, and that I would like to quote here, and this is like, however big the gourd is, it will always live under the leaves. However big the gourd is, it will always stay under the leaves. So that means women must remain subordinate, and the gourd is the men. Gourd is the women and leaves are the men. So women will always remain subordinate, although matrilineal society exists in Northeast. So this sharpen your knife on a stone, control your wife with blows. This is again something which is very, very controversial, legitimizes violence. These proverbs perform cultural labor by reinforcing patriarchy. So in Assamese tradition, proverbs are replete with this patriarchal ideology, reinforcing women's subordination. So This is something I would like to quote. Then again, controlled with blows, these proverbs not neutral sayings, they function as the performative speech acts that reproduce patriarchal structures in everyday life. Priest authority. So there in missing community, we have got missing Nibu, who does all male ritual authority keep and who is considered as keeper or oral history. Then Pumau Napau, he inaugurates the ritual. Au Putir, who is exclusively a male priesthood. That's how we get to know how men control relationship with divine and communal law, and which is coming as a part of our tradition. Then epic storytelling we have, where Khasi power, we talk about public poetic justing. Epic tales define community identity and memory. So does this, male custodians of public history, we find through tradition. This division underscores how folklore itself becomes a tool of social stratification, privileging male voices in constructing public history. Perhaps the most striking example institutionalized male authority is found bachelor dormitories of Nagaland, Morung, and Meghalaya, Nokpante. These were exclusively male spaces where boys were socialized into adulthood. Within these dormitories, they learned essential skills traditionally, such as warfare, carpentry, agriculture, but also absorbed oral tradition, epic tales, and customary law. The Morung functions as both a school and political training ground where masculine identity was forged and leadership qualities instilled. Morung thus institutionalized a cycle of patriarchal dominance. Men learned the skills and the stories necessary for governance. Then I'm skipping some of the lines. So this is here we find a systematic exclusion of women from knowledge spaces in case of warfare, in case of customary law, in case of carpentry, agriculture, etc. Then matrilineal society, again here, I already spoke about the matrilineal puzzle, how women own their property, but at the same time, men is the one who controls the governance. So balance of female lineage and male public power we see here in matrilineal society. Then there are some Khashi and Garo rituals where we also find how folklore reflects interdependence, not dominance. Then there are some counter narratives. Do I have time, or how much time we have, Himanshi?
Ma'am, we have 12 to 13 minutes, but you can take another few, like 1 to 2 minutes more.
All right. So patriarchal structures, even within patriarchal structures, folklore often provides symbolic spaces for imagining female power. Our Naga tales feature figures such as Longkona, a spinster who gives birth to the ancestor of clan, Akangala, whose intelligence secures victory of warriors, and Yazangla, a woman with supernatural strength who surpasses her husband in agricultural ability. The story challenged the patriarchal order by portraying women as intelligent, powerful, or even supernatural agents. But after reinforcing these traditional narratives, they provide new feminist voices within a cultural framework that historically marginalized women. These counter-narratives demonstrate folklore's potential as a site of resistance as much as conformity. Now, when missionaries came, missionaries suppressed the indigenous rituals and superstitions, and decline of Morung, loss of oral tradition we see, and the documentation through colonial lands happened and bias preservation happened. As a result, Western framework altered the indigenous motives. There are examples here we find in this slide number 19. So thus simultaneously silencing traditional voices and opening new pathways for cultural reinterpretation. Folklore does become the contested field caught between suppression and preservation and reinvention in Northeast. Now that we have got YouTube, Facebook, digital archives as new folklore stages, we saw bypassing male gatekeepers, enabling women's agency much. YouTube online channels provide opportunities for the communities to showcase traditions to global audience. Now these platforms
I'm sorry, if you could please wrap up.
Yeah, yes. So this is basically through these digital spaces, folklore is no longer bound by local rituals anymore. So this shift illustrates how modernization can erode traditional institutions and simultaneously create new and more inclusive cultural opportunities. So here we see this shift basically in this paper. I would like to say that how even after considering Northeast being a place where we find matrilineal society and we find women securing a higher position, but at the same time we see this kind of attitude towards female orientation, male orientation, and still this matrilineal puzzle exists. And that's how this tradition has been like evolutionary tradition has been transmitting and transcending to the next generation. So this is what I wanted to communicate in this paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arunima. Nice to begin with. Yeah, we'll rush to the second one.
I would like to interject a little bit. Second one, we have Dr. Pooja Negi, but if she would please allow, I have a special request from Dr. Susmita Pareek. She has a lecture to take after this presentation. So if we could let her first speak and then Dr. Pooja Negi could take.
Yeah, I think if Pooja is just
no problem.
Yeah, thank you, Pooja. We'll go with Susmita. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Susmita Pareek here. Dr. Susmita Pareek is an assistant professor at Department of English and Other Languages at GITAM University. Today, her title would be Inspecting the Female in Rajasthani Folk Narratives. Thank you. I would like to give this platform to Dr. Susmita Pareek. Please come ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pooja ma'am, for allowing me to present before you. Actually, Pooja ma'am taught me when I was in DU, so it's nice to see her. Okay, yeah, I'll just. My PPT doesn't have much, but I hope I can share some stories and narratives from Rajasthani culture, which would help you understand the context and place the women, the female in this cultural milieu. So, hello everyone, I'm Dr. Susmita. I teach at GITAM University, Hyderabad. Thank you for having me here. It's actually always a delight to be included in this center's discussions, talks, and conferences. Thank you for accepting my humble self, just a translator, a literature scholar, to speak on gender and folk narratives. I'll be talking specifically about Rajasthani folk narratives, including one legend, one female-centric folk tale, often shared among female-only groups, and few folk songs sung by women during different festivals, again in female-only gatherings. These extremely different forms of narrative are, of course, centered around women and draw attention to the gendered roles in Rajasthani culture and attempts of the marginalized to reclaim the space through tales of subversion. Here on the slide, I have a quote from the pioneer of Rajasthani folktales, Vijay Detha, who brought Rajasthani folktales to the national pedestal by winning the Sahitya Academy Award for the first time for Rajasthani language. And he addressed in his preface of the collection that he was most thankful to the women who shared their own stories with him whenever he went, and he collected these stories, and they're all part of the Patari Fulbari 14-volume collection. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is actually a story, the history placed into a legendary act. So the legend from 16th century Udaipur belle that takes the archetype of a female, the mother figure, and poses questions through the actions of the maidservant Panna Dai. I'm sure a few of you must be aware of this story. So Panadai was a royal nursemaid. Dai means nursemaid. Her story is not a myth filled with gods and miracles. It is a folk history, a legend so deeply engraved in the Rajasthani consciousness that it has become a foundational truth. So these pictures are from the museum that was inaugurated by the then Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje. Um, um, I, in honor of Panadai. Uh, so a legend deeply engraved in Rajasthani consciousness because it comes from a foundational truth that she guarded Uday Singh, the then prince. It is a tale that asks a very terrifying question: what is the ultimate price of honor? So to put it into the Rajput context, we see to understand the magnitude of Panadai's choice, we must first, set the stage to this. So, in the world of Rajput valor, we see a fiercely patriarchal, honor-bound society. The gender roles here were, in many ways, still are starkly defined. So the Rajput men, for them, their duty, their dharma was to the sport, to the kingdom, to dying a heroic death on the battlefield. The body is a weapon to be spent for a cause. For the Rajput women, the duty, the dharma was to chastity to the home, to crucially to the preservation of lineage. Her body was a vessel, a repository of honor. Her ultimate act of agency was often jihad, self-immolation. So here even Rani Karnavati dies.
Hello? Susmita, hello? You're lost. Hello? You're lost.
Hello?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah, you're audible now.
Okay. So Panadai was a servant, a caretaker, a role often invisible in the grand historical narratives, right? Dominated by kings and battles. So Panadai was entrusted with the care of the infant prince Uday Singh, the sole surviving son of Rana Sanga, and his older cousin, who was reigning king's son. Um, so the crisis rise when the usurper Banvi tries to kill Uday Singh. Instead of thinking to protect her biological son, Chandan, the primal instinctual act of any mother, it affirms the societal norm. Okay, mother's first duty is to her own flesh and blood. She chooses to protect the royal charge, Uday Singh. This is the act demanded by her duty to the throne, to her profession, to the code of service. She did not just choose one over the other. She actually performed a act so catastrophic, so brilliant, so subversive that it rewrote the script entirely. So she placed her own son Chandan in the prince's crib, and when Banvir arrived, he killed Chandan, thinking he is Uday Singh. So, and Uday Singh is then transported in a basket of fruits and fled to safety. So a woman in a society obsessed with bloodlines made her biological son anonymous, his death meaningless to the historical record. To save a child of a superior bloodline, she sacrificed the very thing her identity was supposed to be built upon. Um, so this is where the folk narrative moves from a tale of loyalty to profound commentary on gender. It redefines motherhood. Panadai decouples the motherhood from mere biology. She embodies what the scholar Sarah Rudick termed maternal thinking, a practice of protection, nurturing, preservation that is chosen, not just inherited. She chooses to be the mother of a kingdom's future, maybe. That is what they portray in this entire museum, even at the cost of her biological motherhood. It also claims agency in a world that denied it. So Rajput women's agency was often a negative one. The choice is to die in Johar to avoid dishonor. But Panna, as a maidservant, she reclaims this agency, which is overwhelmingly positive in this light and creative. She chooses to make a king. Her action was not about avoiding a fate, but about actively shaping the future of a dynasty. It also challenges the hierarchy of blood, right? The entire feudal and patriarchal structure rests on the primacy of royal blood. By sacrificing her own son for the king's son, Panna on the surface seems to uphold this hierarchy, but the narrative's power lies in the unbearable tension it creates. The audience is never asked, the listener is never asked to believe it was the right choice, right? Whether it is the correct choice. In a simple sense, we are left horrified, heartbroken, and in awe of Panadai's sacrifice. The folk memory does not remember her as Panna, the mother of a murdered son. It's Panadai, the nursemaid. Her identity is now forever tied to the profession, her chosen duty, her supreme act of intellectual and moral courage. And in doing so, the narrative elevates the often invisible work of caregiving to the level of highest statecraft, which we see through these museums and a lot of folk songs that honor Panadai for her sacrifice. So, from this very extreme martyr tone of a folk, uh, Gangor. So, this particular geet, which the excerpt says, Hando Dhovan Pufo Manga Jhadu Devan Bhuva. It is interesting to note that the use of humor echoes female concerns. She's talking about father's sister Buva and her husband Fufa, and these forms become a form of subtle resistance confrontation. It's through folk songs. So these two, the father's sister and her husband, are being mocked through the lyrics that describe them doing very menial tasks like cleaning cauldrons and wiping floors, completely opposite from their actual roles. And in traditional family structures, especially in patriarchal societies, elder relatives like the father, sister, and her husband might hold authoritative positions. By depicting them doing low status chores in songs like this, it subverts their authority, right? The humor comes from the contrast between their expected roles, the authoritative figure, and the menial tasks that they are shown performing. This undermines their status without directly attacking them, which aligns them with the idea of humor as a tool of resistance. These songs are a medium through which women express their dissent. In societies, a direct opposition to male authority is discouraged or dangerous. Using folk songs allows women to communicate their grievances covertly. The humor makes the critique more palatable and less likely to provoke retaliation. In Rajasthan, as in many parts of India, family hierarchies are very strict. So the elders command respect. Mocking them openly would be a taboo. So the folk song provides a socially acceptable outlet for expressing frustrations, and it's done in female-only groups. This Gangor Pooja. It's performed in during one month in the beginning of the year, which would reinforce. So these songs would reinforce solidarity among the girls, young girls, and women, giving them a collective voice. In the rhyme and rhythm of the song, it's Gor Ye Gan Gor Mata Ko. So it's an entire song. You see, it makes it very catchy, ensuring its transmission through generations. The user specific terms like Hando Dhovan, Chadu Devan are very vivid images. They stick with you. It's like, okay, they are cleaning cauldrons or they're wiping the floor. Imagine of the traditional. Um, so I started with Martyr, and then I moved on to a very different domestic space of female-only folk songs, and now I will introduce to a very different text altogether. So Nagantharo Vanshpate is Rajasthani folktale. It's part of the Batari Fulwari collection, volume 10. So this anthropomorphic tale is about a female cobra, Nagan, and her struggles to get her husband back from humanity. It's an allegorical representation of wives and their concerns regarding polygyny, social stigma, betrayal by the man, etc. The story in itself has a remarkable structure where within a frame narrative, in the beginning, we have Vilyal Nai, a person who is celebrated storyteller. So he's like a great orator of the region, and his conversation with his wife is what opens up the story. And the wife is demanding time from him, asking him to take a break from storytelling and socializing, and start being part of the family. So he leaves her to join a jan. So jan is a barat a procession. So in the deserts, the group of family and friends would of the groom would travel for days to arrive at the bride's house. So this procession through for days is called the jan. This procession, Vilya joins it despite whatever his wife is saying, and uh, he's in this jan challenged by a man who has witnessed a young, beautiful man with a thick cobra around his neck, and he's feeding this cobra milk. So he's challenged to tell the story correctly. So Vilya starts the story, and so this tale, now that we come into the frame narratives, is the tale of a woman from the merchant community, a Sethani, that decides to fake her pregnancy. This is to uplift her husband's mood. So this couple are old, having no children, having so much riches and gold, they have no one to share it with. So she hides the imaginary son from everyone on accounts of his fortune and good luck that depends on staying alone. One day, this imaginary son gets a wedding proposal, and the Seth says yes to it without knowing anything. And the Seth and Setani prepare for this wedding. Setani with a lot of fear because nobody knows that the son is fake, right? Um, Seth is unaware of this, and Setani designs a son out of a bag of flour, and she puts some ornaments on the statue. And while this Jan with the statue in the lap of this Sethani is going through, covered in a caravan, and there are like multiple caravans, and so many people are going. It's a beautiful sight. So a female cobra, Nagan, watches it go, and she tells her husband, the Nag, that she wants to go and look at it closely. He tells her not to go, not to meddle in the ways of the men, but Nagan is curious to witness the Jan. And when she goes there, she finds out that it's a bag of flour and some ornaments on a statue. That's the groom. She feels very sad, and she pleads her husband to turn into a man and to bless the woman with a child and bless the bride to be with a husband. So after very light resistance, the Nag says yes, and he gets married. This young man forgets about his actual wife and starts living the life of a saint. She waits for her husband, who now enjoys the life of a man. After waiting for months, she decides to confront him, and he says he cannot be a Nag again, as he loves he loves the form of the man now, and Nagan is left with just this choice where she has to meet the Setani, confront her, and Setani, when she finds out, thanks the Nagan, and this makes Nagan a deity. This is one of the stories where we call Folklore, where we answer how it came to be. So Nagan is a deity in Rajasthani culture, and why is that she is? Uh, uh, why is that the girls and women preach her, worship her so much? It's because of her big sacrifice where she's sharing her husband as a man for another woman.
We are up with time. But
So I'm just including, yeah. Articulate this three varied uh, accounts, narratives, very different forms, articulate the duality of women's life, constrained by societal expectations, yet finding moments of solidarity and joy by embedding dissent in humor, that is the song, spirituality, and collective ritual. Women transform folklore into a space where their Weltanschauung, the life, the German term for the philosophy of life, yeah, shaped by patriarchy but not defined by it, can thrive. The folk songs ensure that their struggles, joys, and dreams survive across generations, challenging hegemonic narratives while nurturing a distinctly female cultural legacy. The first tale celebrates the transformation of a woman from a mother to a guardian of the entire kingdom. The second one, the folk song highlights the internal discussions, the concerns of the women exercising freedom to express through songs. And the third one uses anthropomorphic, allegorical way to echo concerns of married women. The female cobra is also not spared of human ways. I just hope this vivid description of different folk folk narrative frames and forms helps you understand the image of Rajasthani context and community. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susmita. It was a interesting presentation. Next, we have Dr. Pooja Negi,
Thank you.
Assistant Professor, Department of English from University of Delhi. The title of this presentation is Folk Songs, a reflection of Kinnauri women's incessant struggle and resilience. Ma'am, I present you the plan.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Oh, thank you, Himanshi. Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizing team and Professor Jolly sir for the opportunity to be part of this conference. It's really honored to be a part of panel discussion. Thank you, Professor Jolly sir. While looking at the conference theme, folklore and gender matters, I came across 2 points. The first is folklore is still relevant today because it helps us to understand our history, connect with our communities, even to learn valuable lessons through songs, tales, as we know that how the folklore has been evolved and responded with the changing of the time. Second point is that because folklore is oral in nature and it is mostly deeply intertwined with the women, any genre of folklore we can see more or less connected within the domain of women. Right. So by keeping this conference theme in my mind, I decided to choose the title of my topic as Himanshi has introduced, Folk Songs, a reflection of Kinnauri women's incessant struggle and resilience. So this paper is actually examining the Kinnauri community, which belongs to the tribal district of Himachal Pradesh. Due to orality in nature and lack of written documentation, Kinnauri folklore has been passed down through word of mouth across generation. Kinnauri folklore consists of numerous folk genres, folk songs, folk tales, and women are seen as a custodian of the Kinnauri folk literature. Through folk songs, it reflects the social structure of the society, highlighting the Kinnauri women's position not only as a performers and upholders of the aesthetics, but by preserving the oral folk tradition of the region, but also they're being marginalized and subalterns. The songs they sang highlight the multiple nature of gender discrimination, resistance that have been identified through thematic issue of women pain, sorrow, inequality, and struggles. So by looking at these points, the paper is actually exploring the gender discrimination and its representation through Kinnauri folk songs within the framework of the feminist and subaltern studies. And for the methodology, I tried to look at feminist and the post-colonial approach has been employed to investigate this aspect in my textual analysis and interviews which I have taken during my field study, highlighting the gender discrimination within the society. So while I was going through my field study, the 2 things comes in my mind. While from the gender aspect, I looked at 2 aspects while I was collecting the material. Who tells the narrative? Are women prominent figure or are they absent from those stories? That need to be in consideration. Second, whether the narrator or the teller is an active agent who makes their own choices or if they are portrayed as a passive characters. So these, while they are reacting to events that happen to them. So these are the points I try to explore during my field study and through which, I try to look at Kinnauri society's perception of women, aiming to give voice to Kinnauri women within the context of South Asian studies. So while I'm looking at the Kinnauri women from the subaltern and marginalized perspective, there are 2 points that need to be consideration while looking at the subaltern groups, which not include only those from the imperial colonies, but also individuals marginalized by caste, class, and gender. And this includes the Kinnauri women whose subalternity is defined by their subordinate position within their community. And Gayatri Chakravarti's Vivak's counter-arguments also validates the Western feminist views on the universal issue of women all over the world belonging to the third world who live in the peripheral part of Indian feminist mainstream discourse. Due to socio-cultural, religious, linguistic, ethnic differences in varied tribal groups, Kinori tribal women have their own experience to define their own understanding of subordination. So these women are victims of traditional customary practices of society. So basically what I mean to say, we cannot generalize the women issues, like even though the tribal women in the regions are not homogeneous. So having said all this, it cannot be entirely denied that majority of Indian feminist theories have also adopted and applied the Western theories and views to fit the requirements and suit their needs. This also applies to the Kinori women, wherein the Kinori women have been victim of gender discrimination and the subjugation due to patriarchal beliefs. So it's not possible entirely to exclude the Western feminist perspective while engaging with the Indian women and their global issues. Women from various backgrounds, be it Indian, Dalit, tribal, they share a subaltern condition marked by the social prejudice, violence, and discriminations. And their voices often emerge through marginal literature like oral narrative, autobiographies, poetry, songs. Specifically in context of Kinori women perspective are expressed through either tribal literature or folk literature, and using such genres such as songs, tales, to highlight the discriminatory practice. So by foregrounding this gender issue, this paper actually problematized the idea that subaltern cannot speak. Multiple aspects of Kinori women issues have been highlighted through patriarchal ideology in terms of gender discrimination and marginalization. The various oppression women face globally can also attribute it to the ideologies that feminist theories have opposed through their writing. So by looking at this aspect, this paper will discuss gender discriminations and various forms through folk songs, so which I'll discuss one by one. So gender discrimination, while I'm talking about in various forms, Kinori women have been victims of discrimination throughout their lives. Gender status plays a very significant role in differentiating various prejudice from birth to marriage. For instance, the celebrations like Badayo Shukut, which are observed on the birth of a male child. However, the absence of these celebrations during the birth of a female child devalues and undermine their significance, which emphasize the gender inequality that stems from the biological dissimilarity. In this regard, Stephen Motoy, I quote what he says, I quote, Simone de Beauvoir has discredited this view with the assertion that one is not born a woman, one becomes a woman. For de Beauvoir, the category of gender identity was not determined by one biological sex. Rather, gender is a social construct which can be resisted through social and political struggle, unquote. So there is another song like Shivdasi. This song actually focuses on the male child's significance as she could not bear the one. So Shivdasi songs highlights a desire to have a boy child, highlights Kinori women's preference for male child over female. The birth of boy child brings privilege to the mother in Kinori society as she enjoys respect and dignity. The family, in the family and community. Due to preference for the male children, the community also experienced high number of female birth in 1951. And in this regard, the data which I collected from the statistical department endorsed this view by emphasizing the year 1951, the highest sex ratio of females. So through the Shivdasi songs, what 2 points can we bring out? The 2 focus point, first is Kinori society. The male in Kinori society, the male child is crucial for preserving family lineage and wealth, making their absence as a threat to family legacy. Second, societal gender norms grant privilege to male children regarding ancestral property rights, leading to pressure on the Shivdasi to have a co-wife. Now coming to another songs, this songs is about the preference of the male education and resistance by the Suraj Mani songs. So Suraj Mani songs actually offers a ray of hope for all the women and families through the reference of the women's enrollment in the schools by denying the marriage proposal. Suraj Mani wish to become an independent woman offers a community gradual awareness about the women's education as a major point for liberation. So through Suraj Mani songs, we find a strong determination to educate herself and get economically empowered made her distinct from other Kinori women. So we can infer 2 points from her songs. Through the songs, we came to know that after this, like women education status has been improved with the enrollment of Kinori female schools, students in the schools, which highlights the progress of literacy. From 1971 to 2011, 71% of Kinori women are now they became confident and enjoy more freedom after their enrollment of the schools, their outlook towards girls has been changed. And second is economic independence helps to develop their self-esteem and self-respect. However, the questions that need to ponder over is, has the education empowered Kinori women? Do they have an equal status as men? Are they aware of their rights? These questions are essential analyzing while Kinori women's literacy and right awareness in Kinori regions. Third point here talking about is the domestication of the Kinori women that can be looked at through the Kalzang Dolma songs, which has been sung during the wedding, which conveys a mother's advice to her daughter on adapting to her in-laws. The song emphasized the three key lessons: behavioral adjustment, excellence in household tasks, and enhancing the family reputation. The song reflects the transition from daughter to daughter-in-law and importance of adhering to the societal norms regarding food and clothing choice. The song also underscores the domesticity as a central to gender rules, with mothers training daughters to be ideal daughter-in-law, working early, excellence in household chores, focusing on child rearings. The guidance of not resist with in-laws reinforce the expectation for the Kinori women to be docile, selfless, urging them to outlook differences and prioritize family reputation. In this connection, the Kinori women shares a trait of the cult of true women in the Victorian society, which highlighted by the Lewis Tyson, I quote, in the 19th century, Victorian patriarchy promoted the cult of true womanhood, which idolized that what is called the true women who fulfill her patriarchal gender role in every way. What defined a fragile, submissive, sexually pure? Her proper sphere was home. She would not venture beyond that sphere because to do so would be considered unwoman. Unquote. Now coming to another song that is about the women character and the moral code that is reflected through two more songs on Kinnaur, Zangmopati and Gurkumpati. The song Zangmopati addresses the patriarchal views on morality, highlighting how Kinnauri women's characters are judged. It tells the story of Zangmopati deception to Dr. Chunilal, illustrating the loss of her dignity through the lines like, now there is no self-respect for Zangmopati. The use of term whore, which reflects the main viewpoint that disregards her status, coming from the same men who claimed to love her. So Dr. Chunilal's choice of label her with such terms adds stigma to her character. And in the songs, there's a words like gold, chain, a comb, earring, and a ring, which has been gifted by Dr. Chunilal to Zangmopati, which highlights the commodification of women as object and can be purchased with the money. So Zangmopati position has been devalued and regarded as a gold digger and mere object. Similarly, the Gorkampati songs, which highlights the question of her lover by Deviram, who left her pregnant and refused to accept her as his wife despite his equal involvement in illicit relationship. The question here is about the Gorkampati simply called her lover Deviram, a sinner, not addressing him with a derogatory word, unlike the Zangmopati called whore, which identifies the issue of language politics and how language is also being gendered according to the patriarchal social norms. So these two songs highlights 2 points. The concept of purity and impurity in Kinori society are linked to women chastity and celibacy, with strict norms to enforce them. Second, unmarried women who became pregnant face social scrutiny and humiliation due to the objectification of women regarding sexual conduct. Himanshi, do I have a time?
You can really wind it up. Sorry to say that.
Okay. So I'll come to the last point. That is, Kinori women's role shift to the male in contemporary times. The shift in the role of singers from Kinori female to the Kinori male signifies a significant change in the traditional custodian of Kinori society. Folklore, when transformed into commodity, can reinforce existing power structure. This transition from a women practice to a male-dominated commercial venture is not merely a change. It is a powerful play that erases women's historical contribution and keep them out of the spotlight. As a result, folklore has become a business largely run by men. This situation extends beyond the financial motivation. One notable change is a drastic alteration in the content of Kinori songs, which have increasingly been overshadowed by film songs. The subject matter and themes of newly composed songs are largely revolved around the women beauty, love, lies, deception, and separation, among other issues. Unfortunately, composers influenced by the commercialized world have prioritized profit over substantial themes. social evils, women issues concern about climate and environmental have been largely overlooked. So coming to the conclusion, I would say silencing the voice of subaltern and denial of humanity is a core issue in the post-colonial studies. And the interrogation of issue of others is examined in the light of Kinori women who have been socially, culturally, and biologically conditioned. Due to Kinori women's marginal position, discrimination is not visible in mainstream society. The tracing of silence and oppression is also a crucial aspect of subaltern studies. Intervention as expressed by the Spivaks, can the subaltern speak? This apprehends a discomforting and lack of answer to question, can the subaltern speak? So this analysis of the song shows that Kinori women, including lay women, are marginalized. Their songs express their struggle and pain, raising questions about whether their narratives are truly heard or remain hidden. So with this point, I conclude my presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you for the patience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pooja. Now we move on to our next presenter. She is Dr. Asitha M., Assistant Professor, Department of History, University of Calicut.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. We'll go with Ashita now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Jolie sir.
Ashita, it's a little more louder.
Okay,
Sorry to
sir.
trouble you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jolie sir, for providing me this opportunity to present a paper in this panel discussion. And the title of my paper is Representation of Women in Vadakkan Pattugal, the Northern Ballads of Kerala. My study examines the intersections of folklore, local history, and gender through the Vadakkan Pattugal, the Northern Ballads of Kerala. It's a collection of orally transmitted folk songs, primarily preserved by peasant women for generations. Vadakkan Pattugal serve as a crucial source for reconstructing regional history, particularly the martial traditions of medieval Malabar. While these ballads predominantly focus on male warriors, they also depict women as active participants in social and political life and challenging conventional gender norms. At the same time, they offer evolving perspectives on women's agency within a patriarchal society. By analyzing the representation of women in these songs, this study highlights how folklore both complements and contest the dominant historical discourse, providing alternative narratives that acknowledge women's contribution to regional history and cultural identity. The Vadakkan Pattugal must be perceived as a medium that articulates and subverts the power relationship in the society through alternative imaginaries, though it sometimes paradoxically reinforces the varied gender roles in the family and the society. The Vadakkan Pattugal are broadly divided into three strands. The one group of Puthuram Pattugal that is associated with the Pia family of Puthuram, then the Tacholi Pattugal, which glorify the Nayar family of Tacholi, and the Otta Pattugal, which narrates the struggle and dreams of other individuals, often from the marginal communities. Although they recount the martial deeds, they were transmitted orally by peasant women during agricultural work. And thus they function not only as narratives of heroism, but also as articulations of everyday experience and social critique. Thinking about the relationship between the folklore and history, I draw on insights from the annals historians who emphasize that folklore provides access to popular culture, hidden assumptions, and the mental structure that shape rural life. E.P. Thompson, while pointing to the limitations of both historical and anthropological methods, underlined the importance of folklore in understanding pluralistic societies composed of layered belief, skepticism, and practices. And he also reminds us that customs and practices, often assigned to the realm of women and family, are central to reconstructing the micro-histories of agrarian society. And this shift, as Snell observes, from economic history of agricultural to cultural histories of rural life, has helped position folklore as an authentic source for social history. In this way, the work songs and oral traditions emerge not as marginal but as foundational for understanding women's histories. Singer shows how work songs reveal the origins of the trade union movements among Afro-American workers, while Silik and Akul expose through Turkish folk songs the gender roles, female sexuality, and hostile attitudes towards women in public spaces. In the Indian context, Uma Chakravarti highlights how classical texts often portray women as embodiments of sin and darkness, while neglecting the lived text often or the lived experience of the lower caste women. This absence has pushed scholars to turn the oral traditions as a means of reconstructing the gender relations. The Henry Chasel, Srivastava, and the Davis variously shows that the folk songs in North India eliminate not just marriage rituals and labor conditions, but also women's ability to question social norms and creative alternative discourse. Similarly, the Vijayram Sami demonstrate that Tamil women's folk songs detail dowry, property rights, and the patriarchal relationship with a degree of accuracy absent in the literary text. Here again, the oral tradition serves as a voice of subaltern women. The Ramanujan's division of Kannada folk literature into Puram and Agam, the public and private, helps frame this discussion. But the Vadakan Vattagal of Kerala complicate this binary, and these songs narrate women's public and martial adventures extending beyond domesticity to questions of collective interest. Thus, folklore, read with historical sensibility, not only preserve the cultural memory but also the positions of women, whether the heroines in the songs, such as the Kumada Pannama, the Muchilottu Bhagavati, the Unniyarcha, or Kapalati, not simply as a figures of tradition, but as historical actors embedded in the making of Kerala's social world. The distinctive feature of the Vadakan Pattugal is the presence of Veeranganas or women warriors. The one hero in the Unniyarcha of the Puthuram family belonged to the Riya caste, the lower caste, is the most celebrated, trained in Kalaripayat. That's a martial art of Kerala, and she is represented as a resisting both external enemies and a patriarchal control within marriage, thereby challenging the assumption of male supremacy. The another part will describe the Madileri Kanni. She was a daughter of the Chirakal king and the wife of Vanar king. Is portrayed as rescuing her husband in battle, thus embodying the martial valor typically attributed to men. Then another heroine, the Punitalu, she is a Kurma tribal woman, is depicted as a skilled Kalaripayat fighter and elephant rider who confronts an upper caste king directly. Alongside these, there are figures such as Archer who resist the sexual exploitation by upper caste landlords, confronting the Naduvari and the demanding justice. These heroines collectively exemplify the struggles of women against caste and gender oppression. The ballads also contain references to the significant social cultural practices also, such as the Vidyarambam, the Calicut and widow remarriage in some caste. And they depict kinship structures highlighting matrilineal and matrilocal systems as well as polygamous unions. Importantly, women are not restricted to private domestic spaces. The heroines participate in temple festivals and duels called Angams and other public events. Moreover, songs such as those on the Kapalati and Muchilottu Bhagavati demonstrate how women who resisted oppression were later venerated as mother goddesses, thereby complicating the conventional kinship portrayals and underscoring the social memory of women's courage. Beyond the martial valor, some ballads emphasize the intellectual capabilities of women. For instance, the story of the Muchilottu Bhagavati presents a woman who excelled in Vedic learning, logic, and mathematics, surpassing the male scholars. Yet her society refused to accept her intellectual authority and casting suspicion on her character. This ambivalence reveals both the presence of educated women and the patriarchal anxiety provoked by their learning. And the Vadakan Pataka repeatedly underlined the link between the caste hierarchy and gender subordination. The songs such as those on Pumada Pannamma, the Kapalati and Archa narrate the instances of lower caste women resisting the sexual violence of feudal lords. For example, the Pumada Pannamma resists the advances of an upper caste lord, while Kapalati is remembered as a victim who was later deified. These narratives reveal how folklore provided space for lower caste to articulate their struggle against both caste and patriarchy, the struggles absent from the elite histories. It is important, however, to acknowledge the contradictions within the Vadakan Pattugal. While some songs present the heroines as bold, capable, and independent, the other reproduces the stereotypes of women as greedy, jealous, or deceitful. For example, in the Madileri Kanni Pattugal, there is a character, the Julium Maria Koilum Kanni, poisons the Madileri Kanni to marry the king. And in the Kunitalu Pattugal, the characters, the Kuttiparu and Kuttikumba, conspire against Kunitalu. Further, some songs reinforces hegemonic masculinity, the depicting women as prized for male barriers. And even Unyacha, before attending a festival, is praised for leaving her household in order, reflecting the expectations of women's domestic responsibilities. Thus, the ballads simultaneously subvert and reinforce the patriarchal norms. Despite these contradictions, the Vadakan Pattugal are significant because they were composed and transmitted by lower caste and women. They serve as what one might call the safety valve for expressing frustrations, miseries, and dissent that could not be voiced openly in medieval Kerala. By celebrating heroines as Miyacha, the Pumada Pannamma, the Archa, Muchilotu Bhagavati, and Kapalati, these songs articulate the resistance against the caste and gender hierarchies, even as they remain embedded within a patriarchal framework. In conclusion, these folk songs, the Vadakan Pattugal, must be read not only as a folklore, but as an alternative historical text. They mirror the lives of lower caste women in medieval Kerala, the foregrounding their struggles, resistance, and agency. While they are ambivalent in reproducing certain stereotypes, they simultaneously contest the androcentric discourses by celebrating women barriers, intellectuals, and martyrs. Ultimately, these ballads reveal that women, particularly from the lower caste, were not passive subjects of history, but active participants who negotiated, resisted, and reimagined their roles within a hierarchical society. So the Vadakan Pattugal therefore remain a powerful medium through which the subaltern women articulated their dissent and inscribed themselves into the cultural memory of Kerala. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asitha.
Thank you, Asitha. Thank you for the paper. I think the paper is well written, and most of this paper needs a lot of discussion, but lack of time is making more issue. Now it is Rusha's role to save time for us. Okay, Himanshi or Nimisha, somebody.
Yes, we can have question answer session towards the end, and we can discuss all.
Yeah, we will have it. We will have it. That we'll try. You all can have lunch, and we can have that.
Yeah.
Question. But we have 4 more people. You have to rush it.
Yes. So next we have Ms. Ipshita Bose, Assistant Secretary at Center for Folklore Studies and Research. Her title is Singing Pain, Stitching Resistance, Women's Law and Counter History of Bengal. I would request Ms. Ipshita to please not take more than 11 to 12 minutes, if that's possible. And please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Himanshi. Namaskar and good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Okay.
You are.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Before jumping into my presentation, I would like to convey my gratitude to my mentor, Dr. Muhammad Imtaz Ali sir, Professor Jolly Puthusari sir, and team CFCS for providing me such a wonderful opportunity to share my understanding of folklore, and gender matters. I have already prepared a PPT on the same, and I hope you will enjoy it. Let me share my screen. Is my PPT visible?
Yes, go on.
Okay. My presentation titled Singing Pains, Teaching Resistance, Women's Lore and Counter History of Bengal showcases how Bengali women, marginalized by both patriarchy and colonial modernity, created their own epistemic counter-archives through oral traditions and gender textile-based craft practices. I argue that these lores and crafts constitute a vernacular historiography, a counter discourse to dominant and androcentric narrative. I belong to rural Bardhaman and currently a resident of rural Howrah due to my job. Both these districts of West Bengal have a rich history of feminine oral and performative tradition. Let me begin with a verse from the Baromasha song, popular as Behular Baromasha, which is a part of Monochapala that I have listened during my long stay at my village many monsoons ago. 12 মাসে 13 পার্বণ, সব পার্বণে দুঃখ আমার. 13 festivals in 12 months, yet sorrow is the only constant for me. Structured across 12 months, each month evoking different shades of grief and suffering with an introduction and conclusion, these songs become cyclical testimonies of women's suffering under patriarchy. Parallel to this oral tradition, women stitch their despair into Nokshi Kathas, the signature embroidered quilt art of Bengal, often couplets with embroidered onto fabric articulated existential futility, like the one I have stated, Nishfol Andhokare Dubilo Shopon Brithaye Jiboner Kriba Prayojon. Dreams have gone into never-ending darkness. What's the necessity of this meaningless life? Thus, we see a double modality of expression, the sung and the staged, both work as archives of embodied memory. They reveal how women transform domestic spaces into zones of critique and resistance. Threads of protest, maps of memory, Katha as a vernacular historiography. Katha quilts operate as gender archives where subaltern women inscribe their voices into history. Through motifs of colonial encounters, zamindari oppression, and anti-colonial struggles, they produce a vernacular historiography outside elite narratives. Works like Manoda Sundari Dashi's 19th century quilt exemplify how domestic craft became a counter-historical testimony, preserving memories of resistance often silenced in patriarchal records. In these stitched maps of memory, threads of protest transform private spaces into sites of political expression. These kathas particularly remind us of what Gayatri Chakraborty's Vibha calls the subaltern strategic use of silence and speech. Women did not enter elite historiography, but they scripted it through material culture. Colonial rule and anti-colonial protest in 19th century Bengal's Nokshi Kathas. Here I have already attached the image of the famous Manoda Sundari Dashi's Katha, which is still in display at Gurushodoy Museum. Manoda Sundari Dashi's 19th century quilt from Khulna, Bangladesh, collected by Sri Gurushodoy Dotto, depicts major socio-political events alongside portrayals of Bengali women. The quilt weaves a composite world: East India Company officials, Deshi Jomindars, English soldiers, Baijis, mansions, chariots, elephants, and the tree of life, all through a woman's perspective. Other 19th century quilts from Bengal, now in global museums, vividly depict anti-colonial struggles like the Sepoy Mutiny and the Swadeshi movement. These quilts often preserve greater historical authenticity than dominant male-authored narratives. Beyond historical events, these quilts also reconfigured classical myths. Bengali women, often described as Antapuracharine, confined to the inner quarters, denied education, knowledge of the outer world, and contemporary politics. Yet, in quilts shown by Habiba Mondal and Dipti Haldar Poddar, Shakuntala emerges as an emblem of autonomy, unveiled, educated, and independent. Significantly, King Dushyanta, the patriarchal figure responsible for her suffering, vanishes entirely. This erasure is not accidental. It is an act of narrative recentering. By voicing Shakuntala, women reclaim myth as a site of protest, converting passive heroines into symbols of liberation. Here I have shown an image of the Shakuntala Katha, which is the property of Habiba Mondal. This Katha is actually weaved, as she said, almost 100 years ago by one of our grandmothers. Voices from the margins, oral traditions, and gendered resistance. Women's folk songs in Bengal, whether labor chants, marriage ballads, or lyrical monologues, constitute a living oral archive. These are the in-court protest against sexual exploitation, marital oppression, and socioeconomic marginalization, transforming lived trauma into performative dissent. These songs demonstrates what Ranojit Guha would call the small voices of history, a voice or not erased by reframed through collective memory. Upcoming slides will show how these oral traditions assert political and epistemic authority from the margins, challenging elite, androcentric histories through embodied memory and collective voice. Songs of protest. I have actually attached an YouTube link here, but due to shortage of time, I will not show that to you. I will give the whole description at the references part. You may yourself explore it there. Songs of protest. Protest is a defining feature of women's folk songs and ballads of Bengal, particularly those on labor and marriage, where women faced exploitation both physically and emotionally. Muslim female folk traditions stand out in this sphere, ranging from agrarian labor songs to alakap songs. In Birbhum's labor songs, women boldly resist landlords' sexual advances. For example, the song which I have collected, Siki Poisha Gunte Lari Babu Dekhai Adhuli, Ibar Jodi Dekhash Babu Mairibo Toke Shukna Dhil. Similarly, in Murshidabad's Alkap song, Alkap is a burlesque that is generally performed as a part of Musalmani marriage ritual that shows mainly protest against the marital oppression of the in-laws family. There, the oppression is voiced as রিমিকে ঝিমিকে লাচ পড়ে মশালে মশাল জ্বালাইয়া দে শ্বশুর ভাসুর মানিনে মশালে মশাল জ্বালাইয়া দে. These songs not only reflect women's defiance despite poverty, but also reveal the enduring realities of their workplace and marital struggles. Like in the Alkap song, we can see that moshal or the torch of light is used as a motif for the spirit of protest. And the recurrent use uttering of moshal is showing that how women are protesting against the patriarchy. These songs not only reflect women's defiance despite poverty, but also reveal the enduring realities of their workplace and marital struggles. Rural Bengali women not only face gendered social struggles, but also develop their own reception of political movements. Eminent ethnomusicologist Chandra Mukhopadhyay, in her video titled Rural Women's Call for Swadeshi, illustrates how the illiterate women folk of rural Bengal voiced their support for the ongoing anti-British insurgencies, particularly the Swadeshi movement, through folk songs. Those were composed and articulated orally and still exist in rural Bengal. Songs of desire. Bengali society, being predominantly patriarchal, remained exploitative and oppressive towards both the physical and emotional desires of women. Women were always controlled by men and were not allowed to voice their desires freely. If they did, they were often tortured brutally, sometimes even leading to death. Women's lores, songs, and ballads became an escape in this regard. Through these feminine oral traditions, women gave voice to their suppressed desires, ranging from sexuality to the longing for education. Alongside the famous Bhavaiya tradition, which is very popular as the song of the love song of women, there are Baromasha songs and Musulmani Bier Geet. Also, they contain also strong elements of sexual liberation and autonomy. The latter, through masterful use of metaphors, vividly describes the tortures inflicted by patriarchal society when women dare to voice their desires. The most popular version of Radhikar Baromasha, often credited to Narottam Das Thakur, though the authorship remains debatable, because Baromasha songs, is a part of our typical feminine oral tradition. So, though they are often credited to male writers, it is very much doubtful that if the male writers have actually composed them or not. Shows Radha's longing after Krishna's departure to Mathurapur. In the scorching heat of summer, she yearns for physical union with Krishna through motifs of bathing together in the Jamuna. Recurrent questions such as Kar Ongo Sporsha Kori Hoibo Shital and Anjali Bhoriya Jal Kar Onge Feli reflects her suppressed desires for her absent lover. Similarly, in Musulmani Bier Geet, I got introduced to Musulmani Bier Geet during my field trip to Rar Utsav this April, and that was a kind of life-changing experience for me as a folklore and cultural practitioner. In Musulmani Bier Geet, the same Radha is caught and brutally punished by her female in-laws for expressing her wish to make love and bathe with Krishna in the Yamuna. These songs function as powerful monologues where the female protagonist not only articulates her suppressed desires but also exposes before the audience how patriarchy treats women's struggle for autonomy.
I'm sorry, Ishprita, can you please wind up?
Yes, I am in the conclusion. Just the conclusion slide. To conclude, women's songs and kathas together form a living counter-archive of Bengal. They reveal histories that official records omitted, histories of suffering, desire, and resistance. What unites these diverse traditions is their power to function as epistemologies of resistance. They tell us that history is not only written in state archives, it is also embroidered, sung, and remembered in women's voices. By singing pain and stitching resistance, the women of Bengal refused erasure. To acknowledge them is to recognize history as plural, contested, and deeply gendered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ishprita, for your presentation. And next we have Dr. Rose Marin, Assistant Professor at Department of English, Bharat Mata College, Kochi. Her title for the presentation is From a Crop to a performer. Resistance and struggle of a non-Gyar artist. Ma'am, can you please take over and start with your presentation?
Thank you, Himanshi. Before I begin, thank you, Professor Jolly Puducherry and the organizers for having me. It's an honor. So my paper, as Himanshi already read out, is titled From a Prop to a Performer. A Prop to a Performer, Resistance and Struggles of a Nangyar Kuthu Artist. So I'll just begin with a personal narrative to keep in time with the time allotted with me. I'll just take out only the most important points from the paper. So when I got into research for the first time during my MPhil, I thought of looking at culture through a sensorial embodied form. And the art form which I selected was Mohiniyattam, which is considered as the dance of the enchantress. It's a solo woman performance, and this is performed in the southwestern state of Kerala in India. And for my PhD, I also wanted to look at Nangyar Kuthu, which is a slightly more nuanced form than Mohiniyattam. And I wasn't trained in it because until then I hadn't seen much Nangyar Kuthu performances. Although Nangyar Kuthu, or rather Kudiyattam, which is, I'll talk about it later. Yeah, so Nangyar Kuthu and Kudiyattam already came out of the temple theatre complex, Kootambalam, and it was already performed outside temple complexes in public spaces. There was not much visibility that was available as it was in the case of Mohiniyattam. Yeah, so and why did I take up Nangyar Kuthu as well? Because it is considered to be the only existing model of the earliest dance drama tradition performed exclusively by women, not just in India, but elsewhere in the world. So if I wanted to look at gender performance and a reservoir of the earliest available data, then I didn't have to go anywhere else but look at Nangyar Kuthu. So, and then later I also found out that although Mohiniyattam and Nangyar Kuthu seem to have shared a similar kind of history because both of them come from the same region, Kerala, and both of them seem to have had a matrilineal beginning, because if you look at Mohiniyattam, it was performed mainly by Devdasis, the women who were dedicated to the temple, and there are also references to how Nair women, women belonging to the Shudra caste in the fourfold Varna system, were also performing Mohiniyattam. And it was before it was termed as Mohiniyattam, or the dance of the Mohini. It was actually called as Tevdichiyattam or Dasiyattam. Now this is a very expletive or a swear word that is used. And then I found out through my research that this was a reference to the Vedic Vaishya. J. Devika, Professor J. Devika talks about the traditional Sanskritic representation of womanhood. And there are strictly two divides. One is that of the Kulina, who brought forth legitimate offspring, and the Vaishya, who was a vessel of culture and the provider of pleasure to the male elite. So if Mohiniyattam belonged to the Vedic Vaishya category, Nangyar Kuthu actually belonged to the Kulina category. And this is interesting. So why? Because just like Kalaripaitu, about which you have already heard about, the martial art, where at the pedagogic level, there is an equality, because both men and women are given the same kind of training, and they're trained in the same kalari or the training space. And they were training with the family, and they were moving from one temple to another with their family members. And this was a ritualistic performance, which is very much unlike Mohiniyattam, because it was performed in many of the houses of people who were well off, who were in power, and it was also performed in public spaces. And if you look at the idea about endurance and grace that is associated with Kudiyatam or Kaliripaitu or Nayarkutta, it's very similar. There is no difference between the grace of a woman or a grace of a man. Okay, so now just to qualify what I mean by Nanyarkutta, there is this performance called Kudiyatam, and it has 3 stages. You have Purapada, which is the beginning of the performance, and it has Nritta aspect. And then the second part is the Nirvahana, or this is the flashback sequence where an actor comes and then depicts the characters and plays the protagonist through Abhinaya. And then you have Kudiyatam, which is the acting together, the drama proper. So if there is a Ramayana performance, you have 180 days of Ramayana performance, of which around 40 days would be dedicated to a Nanyarkutta performance. In spite of all of this, you see a conspicuous absence of women for many years in Nanyarkutta. And then you see female impersonators taking up the scene. So we often think of Mohiniyattam being stigmatized and Nanyarkutta not so stigmatized because it is performed in the temple theatre, so in private places, not in public spaces. But still, there is a conspicuous absence. And if we look at the performance forms that are coming afterwards, like Kathakali, another classical art form, which came after Kudiyatam, and even modern Malayalam theatre, you see female impersonators taking up the role of women. So this was intriguing. And we also see women just being taken up as props. So, for example, if Sita had to come onto the stage, she was represented as a light or a piece of cloth, just as a prop. And if there are, even if there are, representations of Panchakanyas, like women who had sacrificed unconditionally and is supposed to be the role model for other women, and such as Ahilya, Draupadi, Sita, Tara, Mandodari. Again, these are all Panchakanyas. These are the 5 Panchakanyas. And in the north, you have Kunti as well. But in the south, in Nanyarkutta, we consider Sita as one among the Panchakanyas. So these are all women who are not from Vajayana. So they are also called Ayonija. So in spite of all these women were not, so they are supposed to be the most purest of the women. But even they were not brought into Kudiyatam, and the answer was always the stock answer, Padivilla, not in practice. So this is where I started looking at it as a researcher. I was also a double outsider because I was neither a Hindu nor a Nanyar. But as the Belgian-born British professor Paul Willemin would state, that this gave me more power as opposed to feeling feeble, because it helped me put one leg inside and one leg outside. There were many places where I felt handicapped, but I think the way in which I approached the subject was probably because of this, double outsideness. And now, how do I see folklore and gender coming into this topic? Because this subjectivity as a researcher helped me follow a non-canonical approach to research of Nanyarkutta. So I looked at ethnography, I looked at historiography, autobiography of performers, maintaining close contact with performers, interviews, watching performances, close reading of texts. Folklorist way of looking at the marginalized, to look at those away from the centers of power and those who are not part of syndicated religions. Today, we already heard from Professor Moli Kaushal how we look at things in a dichotomical manner: folk versus classical, literary tradition versus big tradition, Deshi versus Margi, Logadharmi versus Natyadharmi, traditional versus modern, and so on and so on. And if we look at it in one way, probably we're talking about in terms of Ferdinand de Soto's idea that these are ways in which we where meaning is derived from the relationships between these signs rather than from any inherent connection between words and things. But as Professor Molly Kaushal already talked about, this is also how heritage economy works. I'm sorry, I can't go into the details of this because I'm running short of time. So performance studies, as many of you might know, is an interdisciplinary academic field that uses performance both as a method of inquiry and a lens to study society, drawing from disciplines like anthropology, sociology, cultural studies, psychology, and so on. So this way of history, understanding history as history not a fixed record of facts, but a dynamic construction shaped by a narrative, language, and selective memory, as argued by Hayden White and Frank Angsmith, is important because history is something that continues. So why understand history? Because history repeats itself. So when we look at the gendered aspect of history, local, national, cultural identities, these are all created through history, and it has been long been inscribed on the female dancing body. Now, I will also would like to make a point here that when we talk about gender and history, I do not want to romanticize women's history, but I would like to keep it as a counter narrative to dominant history, because generally the idea is that when men do research on men, it's all about people, and when women do research on women, it's all about gender. So this is a problematic idea because everyone is gendered with individual intersectional positioning. So folklorists might look at feminism as both political feminism as well as theoretical feminism, and both is liberatory philosophy, and it gives attention to the different layers of femininity. And this way of looking at Nanyarkuttu also helped me look at vernacular feminism. So the strong elements of the local or the vernacularity can be seen in our living traditions, and the question is whether we can regain our unique voices through the aesthetic theories or guidelines set by such concepts. For example, we have concepts like Tinai in Sangam period, which talks about the poetic landscape and how that embodies specific emotions and situations, particularly in the context of love poetry, Agam. Or even a simple concept like Sahradaya, which we see in Natyashastra, which talks of the same heart at par with each other in feeling, as opposed to a connoisseur, where a connoisseur is an expert judge in matters of taste. You know, these are some of the interventions through which we can use, you know, regional history or vernacular history to look at to look at our own to look at the subject that we are dealing with. So again, this is not to say that in India, because we believe that tradition is all Indianness and modern is Western, so this is not to posit with several ideas that are coming up. So instead of Eurocentrism, you go with Indian knowledge system, where you give importance to some one and then negate the other. But when late capitalism and hegemonic masculinity continue to construct social performances of masculinity and femininity, looking at performing arts such as Nanyarkuttu, especially I would like Himanshi to play that small video, and it's just 1 minute and 27 seconds. So these are some of the performances which resist such narratives, and this is very invigorating. Himanshi, could you please play it?
Himanshi, yeah.
Yeah. While it is getting played, I'll just give you a small introduction to the performance. This is a Nanyarkuttu performance titled Ahalya by Usha Nanyar, and this is a poignant account of a feminist retelling. It's a work that questions the existence of a woman who turns into a stone, who has become numb, who is unable to respond, who has no space for explanation, who is in internal strife. Okay, so she is seen wronged by both the god Indra, who deceives, as well as her husband, who curses, and yet it is she who serves the sentence. So this is a representation of woman who suffers with both with beating as well as patting, and has to wait for ages for justice to be meted out to her. And Usha narrates how in Ramayana, Ahilya is not a character, but just a stone, a thing. Valmiki Ramayana, you don't see Ahilya as a character, but as a stone. So she gives voice to Ahilya because she takes the idea from Chindavishtyaya Asitha by Kumaranashan, which is about pensive Sita or Sita in deep thought, where Ahilya is given a voice. She's able to think, and she takes the idea also from Vishnu Narayan Nambudiri's poem Ahilya Moksham, with it is 3. In spite of the fact that many of them would call Nangyar Kuttu as classical and traditional and all of that, the performance of Usha is pretty contemporary, and she is also, in many of as we already talked about Logadharmi and Natyadarmi and all of that, if you see many of the mudras, what she portrays is also something that probably be shaped by even the movies that have come out from Kerala recently, like The Great Indian Kitchen, where you see the mundane way of working, and then there is no appreciation coming up. It has been remade in Hindi as well as Mrs. So those who haven't seen the movie might also remember this. So Valmiki talks about Ahilya in this Balakanda, where he says he thinks that Ahilya has actively or consciously done the adultery. And this is what he says. On the day chance the same had gone away, when town-destroying Indra came and saw the beauty of the dame, the sages formed the god endured, and thus the fair Ahilya booed. Love sweet should brook no dull delay, but snatch the moments when he may. So she knew him in the saints disguised, and still went and had an unholy love affair, is what Valmiki says, which is what Vishnu Narayan Nambudiri also critiques, and this is what Usha Nangya takes. So she is not taking all the element just from a Sanskritic tradition. She is making use of all the contemporary texts that are available around her, and she also questions why Rama is portrayed as a passive listener, and why is he actually a man, or is he a metaphor representing the patriarchal institution that believed in female existence of the mercy of man? So this non-Vedic tradition to rewrite the history, and do I have 2 more minutes, or should I wind up?
Yeah, you can take 2 minutes. Anyway, we are running across it.
Okay, so this is just to give a bit more detail about the performance. So this is young Ahilya given in marriage to Saint Gautama by her father without consulting her. The only pet in the hermitage is a young deer. So this is that section where she becomes a stone, and she sees the deer, the only contact she has in the ashram. But because she has become a stone, she is unable to respond even to that little deer. So her husband Gautama follows a strict daily routine, which mainly consists of bathing and chanting. Ahilya is literally a maid, as per Usha's interpretation. She is in charge of cleaning the yard, washing, picking flowers, preparing materials for meditation, and so on. So there is no sexual intimacy between the couple. In fact, the only other person who even hugs her is a pet deer. And it's the deer that gives her company during all the daily chores. Suddenly, one day, another man falls in love with her, and it's none other than, as we know, Gaudindra. And one day, while he was patrolling, he immediately notices a woman on the ground because of her physical beauty, and then he disguises as Sesh Gautama, her husband, and approaches her. And these are some of the areas where you actually see, Ahalya having a voice of her own. She leaves a sigh of. I mean, she has lost that love, that thirst, and it's not about a thirst for flesh. Now, and she titles this as Ahalya Vimochanam, not Ahalya Moksham. That those wordings are very important. It's about liberation of Ahalya and not about salvation of Ahalya. Ahalya hasn't done any sin to be saved. So these are some of the, so again, there are many ironies. I don't have time. So I'll just make one note of it. So when the sage curses her out of anger because of extramarital sex that he thinks has had, he says, "Do not be afraid to become a stone. Here, only wild animals will come and hurt you, and they won't hurt you." Okay, so these are some of the ironies, because Ahali had been living as a stone for ages, and her husband never noticed it. And once he had made her into an actual stone, he is saying that no one is going to come and hurt you, so you're going to be safe. I'll take care of that. So these are some of the. She had already become paralyzed even before she had become a stone, and the small performance piece that you saw was her trying to shout. No sound is coming out, and she is looking around to see whether someone will come and rescue her. And then she sees the deer coming, and then looking out for her. And then she can see everything, she can feel everything. She is living within the stone, but she can't express anything. So to conclude, Usha Nangyar, it could be argued, continues to work within the tradition, but through a deeply interventional scholarship by which she has retrieved and reconstructed the lost female roles in the Nangyar Kutu repertoire. So this is one of the performance piece she actually, retrieves from the older repertoire and then tries to reconstruct it. And in these roles, she has enlarged the scope and agency of the characters, placing the heroic rasa wherever necessary, even as she does not consciously provide alternative feminist interpretations of traditional narratives. And one more point, where Usha Nangyar does not consider herself as a feminist. And although I do not believe in an idea of post-feminism, normalizing feminism is also not the right way to go about it. And I would like to end with Maya Angelou's quote: "Every time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all the women." Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you so much. So we'll go with the next one.
Yes, sir. Next, we have Dr. Relo Kenya, guest faculty from Center for Comparative Literature, University of Hyderabad. The title for the presentation is Weaving Words, Weaving Worlds, Folklore and Awareness Writing.
ठीक है, समय अगर कहते फ्री हैं लास्ट बोल शेयर for question answer session.
Yeah, I think there is some background noise somewhere else.
Or got the permission. हाँ, मैं अगर
Rosha, Ipshita.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, sir. You're
Thank you, Himanshi, and thank you, Professor Jolly and your team at the Center for Folk Culture Studies for this for having me once again in your 3-day event on folklore and folklore matters, and in this session on folklore and gender matters. So, going by the concept mode, I was sort of thinking as to what can be shared or brought forth into this session. I am someone from Nagaland, or rather from the Naga Hills. So as an insider, there are a plethora of themes or subjects like traditional knowledge systems, performative practices like folk songs and dances, or events like stone pulling practices or feasts of merit, fusion of tradition in the institution of the church and stuff like that. So I was trying to pin down on one. So with my background in literature and cultural studies, I thought it would be good for me to bring this subject of Naga women writers as agencies and intermediaries in not only preserving the heritage and folklores of what I would call Naga life worlds, but also in engaging with values, mores, narratives, and practices of this same life world with the changing dynamics of the same community over the years, right? In the context of the contemporary. So hence the title of my paper, Waving Words, Waving Worlds, Folklore and Naga Women Writing. And also given the time and the nature of my talk, I will seek to bring out some broader points, more like in the general discourse and not necessarily into the detailed readings of the text or textual exposition of the text per se. And I would also like to add that this is like an ongoing project of sorts. So still trying to think around some of these questions even as I present this. So yeah, the structure of my talk is centered around three main points. I think I'll be focusing on the first two. The first one is the role of these women in projecting folklore as a fusion of sorts, in the sense that it is not only folklore that is isolated to a relegated past, but folklore that is also not lost in the contemporary, right? Or in other words, renditions and retellings of the folklore in tandem with the contemporary realities and state of affairs. So that would be the first point. The second one is the role of women in capturing everyday lives of the people. I think that is something which is quite obvious, but this is in the larger context of the understanding or the practice of doing history of sorts, where I argue that meta histories or meta history historical events are often engaged with by the menfolk, but it is women who really brings out the seemingly mundane and the everyday life experiences of the people, the ordinary folk, or writing ordinary lives in MSS Pandyan's sense of the term. So the role of women in that regard. And in the third point, which is still, at the cursory level of sorts, is this idea of capturing a sense of pan-Naga communitarian ethos. Nagas are, a plethora of different tribes and linguistic communities, as you know. So how these women writers also achieve some kind of, in establishing some kind of a pan-Naga communitarian ethos through their works, right? So those are the three points around which I'll be, discussing my talk or other presentation. So yeah, I am basically looking at three women writers. The first one is Esterlin Kire. I think she's a familiar name. I just have one of our books here. I don't know if this is visible, but this is one of them. And this is the Naga oral tradition by Tensela Au. And I have a small book because the camera is reversed. I think things are appearing reversed. This is a wrestling day by this writer called Tyagi. So, like I said, I'm not going to go into the details. The names again, Esterlin Kire. The second one is Tensela Au, and the third one is a writer called Tyagi, who is also often known as Mekhala Mama in her social media, platforms. Anyway, so just to draw some text from the works of these writers, there is this novel called Bitter Wormwood, Bitter and then Wormwood by Esterlin Kire, which is basically about the Naga political history, the violent Naga political history with the Indian state. But what she achieves to do in her work is she uses this idea, the image or the allegory of the bitter wormwood. It's a traditional herb, a plant, which is believed to keep spirits away. So she uses this motif and this theme throughout her novel to build her plot, her narrative, her story. And so what I'm trying to say is she achieves this facet of bringing elements from the Naga traditional life world in tandem with the more recent socio-political history of the Nagas, right? So that is where I'm trying to move towards. But if we were to, juxtapose her work with another work of her, like The Man Who Lost His Spirit, this is a story, The Man Who Lost His Spirit. This is about traditional accounts, legends of how often in Naga villages there are certain areas in and around the village which are supposed to be forbidden, where people are not supposed to go, right? But therefore, this story is about a man who ventures into this forest and then he comes back home without his spirit. So the story gives a detailed account of how rituals and certain, uh, traditional systems and practices are followed to bring the spirit of the man back to the village. So the writing is done in such a way that you can relate and connect with the the ethos, the sensibilities of the life past, as well as from a contemporary lens. So another interesting aspect in Eastern Kire's works is this idea of lycanthropy, were tigers or werewolves, or in the Naga context in Eastern Kire's works, she uses her Tenide language, Tekumivi, which means someone who has turned into a tiger. So there is this short novel, if not a novella, called Don't Run My Love. So this story is built around this character who is actually a were tiger or a tiger man. Another author that I have mentioned is Tensula Au. She has written a book called the Au Naga Oral Tradition, which is not a work of fiction. It's an academic book. It's considered to be a foundational text in the reading of oral traditions in Naga society. But I also would like to bring a story from her works, which is there's this story called The Last Song, which is about uh, the times. Again, it's set during the violent political history of Indo-Naga conflict. So this story is about how the Indian army raids a Naga village, burns down the whole village, and then um, kills this lady. The title of the song is The Last Song. So the event is set in a church where they were about to sing a song when the army comes in, and then all kinds of violent atrocities, which is not worth, I mean, which we don't feel like describing, is committed by the army. And then in resilience, the protagonist, the lady who is supposed the singer, keeps singing. So these stories are based on actual historical events. So my point here is, can we also sort of conceptualize something like this in the socio-political history, which is not necessarily drawn from the traditional life world per se, but can also be sort of read as a folklore of sorts, like for the present generation to go back and read or think of this as some kind of folklore of something that has happened to our ancestors. So that's the second example or the second author that I wanted to cite. And the other one, this is called, this is by the author T. Keditsa. This is again showing reverse, but it's actually a wrestling day. It's for children. It's 5 years and above. But what is very interesting here is the whole story is set in the modern day Nagaland's capital city of Kohima, and it's about two siblings who go on to visit to witness the wrestling match, traditional Naga wrestling match played with where their brother participates. So again, long story short, what I'm trying to bring out here is in all of these stories, you see that there is a fusion of both what is going on in the everyday lives today, and then also elements of the past that are still part of the present. So the point here is that these women writers, among other emerging writers, have been able to, as the title suggests, weave together folklore as belonging to the people and not just folklore in an isolated, insulated notion of the past. A larger question that we are continuing to, engage with, right? So like the intricate but beautiful patterns of traditional shawls and attires, these writers have been able to, weave together these layered realities and experiences of the people. So that's the first point. The second point, which is also closely related, is the role of women in narrating the everyday lives and history of the people. Like I said, if we were to do Naga studies, there are certain axes like the the tradition modernity axis, the colonial encounter, pre-colonial, post-colonial axis, and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to point out here is that in doing this kind of history or looking at this axis, it is almost always men who looks at the meta history, the larger events that has shaped Naga history of sorts. But in the process of which there's this scholar called Tobias Kelly, who has observed that especially in conflict-ridden zones, the whole idea of violence or conflict is sensationalized, that the actual mundane lived experiences of the people is often relegated or receded to some kind of a, subordinate position. So what I've noticed in my readings and what I'm trying to continue to work on is this idea that it is actually the women, as you can see from the examples I've mentioned earlier, who are able to bring this side of history, which is actually people's history, right? History of the folk, of the ordinary people. For example, there's this interesting account by this Naga scholar Dolly Kikon. She writes about this whole practice of making akuni, fermented soybeans. Some of you might know this strong, pungent smell Naga food. The whole act of preparation, she goes and does that in her field work. She studies this, and then when she goes to one of the places to interview some of these women who engage in the making of akuni, she is first met by the menfolk of the house, and then when the scholar goes meets them and tells them that she is doing her work on Naga history, it is the man who talks about Naga political history as the important part of history. But this writer goes on to say that you see how the women are often relegated to domestic spaces, but they are already like active participants of this participants of the same history. So yeah, the act of making a food item is again, like I said, relegated to some kind of trivial, insignificant job. But she brings out this fact that this side of things show the condensed, layered experiences of the people. Even in Eastern Kire's novels, you see like very seemingly insignificant events like the act of cooking in the hearth of the kitchen and using ingredients like garlic, ginger, which are very local and immediate to the experiences of the people. So even if the writing or the narratives are marked by simplicity, they bring out this immediate sense of experiences of the people passed down the years. So writing ordinary lives in that sense of the term. So history, which is people's history, has largely been achieved and accomplished by these women writers, right? Yeah, the last point is like I was saying, the Nagas are a hugely diverse, collective of tribes and people from different languages. So what these writers have sort of achieved in their works is also what they do is they bring in names from different Naga tribes as their characters. So they don't subscribe to or confine their stories to a single tribe. In some cases, that may be the case, but you see this deliberate attempt on their part to bring in names from different tribes to write their stories, and then these stories in the process becomes like stories of the larger Naga collective, the larger Naga community. So Though this may seem very insignificant, they also achieve this larger idea of consolidating a pan-Naga communitarian ethos and experience, right? So yeah, I think that's about it from my presentation.
Thank you, Renu. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
just it's wonderful to listen about Tenslao to begin with. It's
Yeah.
nice.
Thank
Well,
you.
anyway,
Yeah.
the last presenter will go. Himanshi?
Yes,
You
sir.
there? Yeah, people are.
Is,
Sorry, Nimita, you are gone into the lunchtime.
So the last presentation is from Dr. Nimitha KP, an independent researcher from Kottayam, Kerala. Her title is Sacred Femininity, the Mother Goddess Worship in Kerala's Folklore and Historical Narratives. I would also request you, ma'am, to please not exceed more than 10 minutes because we are already extremely late. Like, it will be difficult for all of us to go ahead on hungry stomachs and to focus as well. So kindly go
Hello.
ahead.
Okay, thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah, okay, Nimita, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Here, little network issues there. That's why I'm little worried about that. Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Jolly Puducherry and Center for Folk Cultural Studies for the opportunity I got here as a panelist. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. And for today's presentation, I'm mainly focusing about the Mother Goddesses worship in Kerala and how the folklore and cultural and historical narrative, how we can see the representation of Mother Goddesses. I'm focusing on that thing. I will share my PPT here. I'm not talking each PPT and all, but I will show some pictures and all. That's why I will show the PPT 1 minute. One minute. I think it. Okay, 1 minute.
You want us to share or think?
Sir, one minute. I will try from here once. If it's not working, you please operate from the. This PPT came over, sir. Is it visible there? Hello?
No, it's not.
Sir, PPT, it's not there.
It's not, it is not visible. Yeah.
Nimita, can you try sharing the PPT with me? I can share it on.
No, one second. I'll.
Joel, sir, I already shared to him.
Yes. I'm just doing 1 second. One second. There. Open.
1 minute. അവിടുന്ന് അവർ ഷെയർ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ടോ തോന്നുന്നു.
Meanwhile, if we have any questions, we can.
No, it's like, no, it's getting ready. I will.
All right. Sure. Yeah,
It's playing from there now. PPT is visible or what? Is it there?
Yeah, it is visible. It's on your screen. Your screen is visible. Can you go with the first?
1 minute.
Nimita, you were able to share the screen with us, and I think you were supposed to bring the PPT forward on the screen.
Okay, 1 minute.
Your screen is visible, yes.
It's came. Now it's came.
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Okay, thank you. And now I will start with the presentation. And first of all, I would like to talk about the Mother Goddess worshipping system and how the particular matrilineal system of descent and the matrilineal culture correlated with the Mother Goddess worship in Kerala and all. And the Mother Goddess worship in Kerala is closely connected to the nature worship also, because the sacred grove, the Kavu system is the most unique element in approaching the understanding of Mother Goddess worship in Kerala and all. And the Mother Goddesses in Kerala, she is known in different names like Kali, Bhadrakali, Bhagavati, Kannagi, Chibodi, Kurumba, Vasurimala and all. And generally she is known as Bhagavati. And whenever we are talking about the Mother Goddess worship and all, we should aware about the historical root and the status of women in the earlier society and all. Then only we can analyze and we can get a clear picture how the Mother Goddess worship have cultural impact in the present society also. And that slide is moving over.
No, here's first slide. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Then
Go ahead.
Okay. Now I will talk little about the ancient Tamilagam and all, because earlier as a history student, it's first I will talk little about the historical background about the woman goddess, female goddess, and how the matrilineal system and the Sangam literature and all, what's the status of women and all, we will discuss. And here I am talking about the female war goddesses, how the Kotteva, she is represented as a female goddesses and she is worshipped as a war goddesses. Mother goddesses, earlier time, the rulers, they worshipped her as a war goddesses, and for agricultural yield also people started worshipping her for fertility and for prosperity and all. There are different kind of functions are there for worshipping her. And I'm not talking much more about the separate rulers of Kerala in the earlier period, like medieval time. They have their own chief deities, and all deity have their own goddesses, and they are war goddesses, and at the same time they are the Paradevada or Kula Devada or the Desha Devada also. People start worshipping her also. Here I want to focus about the ritual aspects of the Mother Goddesses worship. Along with this Mother Goddesses worship, for appeasing her, there emerged a lot of folk ritualistic art forms. I want to talk about a little about this thing. The folk art forms like Teyyam, Pana, Kurudi, Kalambeluttum Patta, Mudiyettu. In all these performances, we can see the importance of Mother Goddesses worship, and the rituals are the for pleasing the Mother Goddesses. In today's discussion, I'm mainly focusing on the Teyyam performance and Kalamezhuthum Paattu. In folk tradition, this Teyyam, I will discuss it later, and Teyyam, we can see performers are embodying female goddesses. Actually here, male are performing as a female goddesses, and in Kalamezhuthum Paattum, in that tradition, we can see that it's a first visual narration or visual imagination of Mother Goddesses. Earlier, Mother Goddesses worshipped as in the form of stone, tree, or sword, anklet. Different kind of symbolic representation was there. But when the Kalamezhuthum Paattum tradition started, Kalamezhuthum Paattum, it's a traditional art form, and it's a floor painting of goddesses like Durga, Shasta, and Kali, even snake also worshipping in this art form. And different names, it's known in the different parts of India, it's known as different names. In Kalamezhuthu, that's very particular and unique to Kerala. And in that Kalamezhuthum tradition, here I am focusing on the Bhagavati Kalam, or the Mother Goddesses Kalam I am talking, and the Sarpa Kalam or the Naga Kalam. We can see that in that Naga Kalam, women performers are there, and sometimes women also drawing the Kalam. But when it's come to the Bhagavati Kalam or Shasta Kalam. Shasta Kalam means it's a kalam about Lord Ayyappa, and the Bhagavati Kalam, women are not drawing, and it's a male member of a particular caste group. They are drawing the kalam. Women are not allowed to draw the kalam, and this particular caste group, they known as Andarala Jati also. Andarala Jati means that they are above the Nair community and below the Brahmin community or Nambudiri community in Kerala society. And this caste group, they are known as Kallattakurupu, Tiyambadi, Tyagi, Unnigal. These are the Andarala Jati. And here also we can see women are not participating as a performer, but they are as a devotees, we can see. In these two pictures are from my field work. And the first picture we can see the priest is doing the rituals and puja. And the second picture we can see women worshipping the goddesses as devotees, and they don't have any other role. They don't have any ritual role here. And the clear, what we will say, the in private and public, like my co-panelist Pooja ma'am, she already discussed about Gayatri, Spivak, private and public, and how women are represented. I'm also approaching that thing here, because when it's Kalameluthum Patum, the Sarpa Kalam, that Kalam is not performing in the temple premises. Usually it's performing in the Kava or Sarpa Kava. There we can see women are performing. But when it's come to the temple premises and the public or public domain, we can't see any female are performing. Say next, I'm talking about the Theyyam. Already Dr. Asitha, she already talked about the Muchlotu Bhagavati. She is one of the most celebrated mother goddesses in Theyyam category. And Theyyam is a ritual art form that in North Malabar, Kerala, and there are a lot of Theyyam, more than 400 Theyyams are there. But here in this presentation, I'm mainly focusing about the mother goddess or fertility figures of Theyyam. There are hero worshippers are there, animal Theyyams are there. But I'm not talking about all those things. I'm talking about the fertility and the mother goddesses Theyyam. And here, this is the Muchilotu Bhagavati and image of Muchilotu Bhagavati. Here also, these Theyyams are performing by men. Women are not performing as Theyyam and all. We have in folk narration and folk mythology and all, we have a lot of stories regarding the exploitation and the sufferings of these goddesses. When they were as a human being, they suffered a lot, but later when they will venerated as mother goddesses, people start worshipping them and all. And this is another Theyyam known as Uchita. This is also comes under the mother goddesses category. And this is another Theyyam, that is Makam. Makam, she is a mother and she is having twin boys, and her family members, her siblings, they killed her because due to the sexual allegation and scandal. Based on that thing, her own brothers killed her. And when she venerated as goddesses, people start worshipping her. And in all these performances, we can see all the female characters are enacted by male members. But one exceptional case is there in Theyyam performance and all. Only one Theyyam is performing by female. That is Devakutu. But in this Devakutu performance also, there are a lot of restrictions for women, because the performer, the female performer is an aged lady, usually above 50 or 55 age. And the larger Theyyam category or the law givers or the text compilers, those who codify the text related to Theyyam and all, they are not agreeing it as a proper Theyyam. By showing its name, it's like Devakuta. They are arguing that it comes under the category of Kuta. Here also clear-cut differentiation. Women are not coming here in a ritual space, and in a patriarchal or male-dominated ritual space, women are not coming. If they are coming also, there are some like limitation or restriction, menopause condition. It's all about their monthly impurity maybe that's restricting from performing all this thing. And here some gender dimension I would contribute to the Theyyam and this Kalamelithum performances, like gender performativity. Also, we can see here what Judith Butler point out. My co-panelists already point about this thing, how the gender is acquired through repeated performance or sacrifices. That element also visible here in Theyyam. It's not fixed by repeat expression or repeat this thing, like women are showing, men are showing the women character, and they are clothing or dressing like a male, female, and they are using the ornaments and all through this performance, or they are getting into a female. And Gayatri Spivak concept also applicable here. I already told in Kalamelithum Patum tradition and in Theyyam also same thing. We can see that in a private space, female can perform and they are doing it's a very less ritualistic and all, but in a public space, they are not allowed. And some kind of feminist implication, empowerment, how we can see this folklore narration and tradition, how women empowerment is the goddess, through the goddesses worship, we can see the recognition of feminine energy and all. And if it's temporary space also, they are getting some kind of voice and authority, and this ritual giving sanction of that kind of authority and all. But at the same time, some contradictions also there, because women are exalted as goddesses, but they are excluded from the priesthood. And we can clearly say that it's a kind of symbolic representation. And by concluding that thing, I'm concluding. By mother goddesses worship and all, it's a powerful cultural and historical practice that firmly rooted in the folk and ritual. And the ritual performance like Theyyam and Kalamelithum Pata, it's playing an essential role in honoring and preserving the memory of feminine power also. While the women are esteemed as goddesses, they are often marginalized as ritual performers and all. Ultimately, goddesses worship is a dynamic arena that where folklore, faith, gender, everything is intersect with significant implication and all. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nimita. Sorry that we have still stolen your time. So,
it's okay, sir.
but it is wonderful to listen to you, and there's a lot of things to open up. Himanshi, I'm sure that we thank you for the presentation also. I'm sure that it's been a late day, and we have gone into the lunch, but I will ask Himanshi to a little bit wind up, and if anyone has to express certain things, because there were a lot of wonderful papers from Arunima to taking up a case of women from Northeast and looking at the songs of women from Northeast, weaving practices from Northeast, etc., to Pooja's paper on the folk songs and Susmita's paper on particularly focusing on the stories from the Rajasthan and Nagin story, and Asitha bringing in multiple songs of the Vadakan Patu tradition, bringing in characters like Madhulirikani, Bhumadepunnu, Kunyipalu, etc., and Rusha is bringing further into the songs of desire, and Rose is bringing a performative turn to the particular kind of talk, where Nanyar Kutu and the Ahalya, theme of Ahalya, and Usha Nanyar's performative interventions, etc. Relo bringing Tesla's book and the text based on the lore, etc., to Nimita's, the disparity of you make me goddess and never make me a priest. So it's a wonderful afternoon, and now and I'm really like I'm just trying to do. So let us I'm giving it to Himanshi.
Thank you, sir. You have concluded things quite well.
No, I didn't conclude it. It's your and
No,
Nimisha. I have to thank both of you.
yeah, I would like to thank everyone and especially the presenters for presenting and for presenting these ideas which are new to the concept of the audience. And as today we are celebrating this as on the occasion of Folklore Day, I really appreciate how we have come across many ideas and many concepts which require our urgent attention towards reading and studying folklore. Just how sir has concluded about most of the presentations, I've especially noticed how the concept of folklore has expanded not from within the people, that what people express and how it has come to the forefront, and it expresses the worldview to the people, but also in the ethic scholarship, of the presenters and performers. Like within the folklore itself, there are critical voices, there are critical expressions which are enough for a scholar to study. And where we become especially critical, dependent on theories, we have to look into the matter which lies within the contextual performativity of the folk culture. And from the very beginning, the how Molly Kaushal set the the table to discuss something on the lines of how folklore as a term itself has been contested since a long time in the history of academia. The nomenclature has changed on the basis of political and cultural influences, and the use itself, that how people want to use the idea of folklore for their own purposes, for their own identity creation, for their own political reinforcement of nationhood, etc. But folklore as a performance, as a everyday praxis which comes from within the people, not from the community, which becomes part of an imagined boundary, which becomes part of a nationhood, which becomes part of an assimilation to inclusivity of people who have actually holded the concept of those ideas from generation. So how community become more inclusive of everyone, folklore become exclusive of that idea. It becomes a marker of an idea which requires a layered study, which requires a layered perspective, not from just one single theoretical perspective, but from different inputs. So especially what Dr. Rello was also trying to incorporate through his papers, that how from literature point of view, when people write, especially women writers, write about their own stories, it becomes important that not just that they bring the literariness to the folk, and it's not about eliminating the idea of folk, but it's also about perpetuating, about instilling back the idea of this notion of storytelling, the notion of holding one's culture back in our own way of commodifying concepts, and in our own way of practicing concepts. And I think it has been a long session for everyone. We must be tired and hungry. So I would also like to conclude the session today with a note of thanks. And I really appreciate how we have like holding up until this moment to appreciate each other's work and acknowledging the kind of presentations and words we have shared today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for holding up until this late.